Okay, welcome to the Wednesday night shir. This shir tonight is sponsored in the schus of a refuah shlema for Avraham ben Leah. Hashem should send him a refuah shlema ukreiva. The name of tonight's shir is "When Do I Have to Start Being Happy?" I guess it depends who you ask, right? When do I have to start being happy? The Gemara Masechta Tainis, famous Gemara. I think everybody knows the Gemara. Daf Chav Tes Amud Aleph says as follows: Mishanichnas of, or the Mishnah, I should say, says Mishanichnas of Matin B'Simcha V'Chulu. When of commences, when of begins, we decrease our simcha. Says the Gemara, Omer Rav Yehuda Berei de Rav Shmuel Bar Shelas Mishmei de Rav Yehuda, the son of Rav Shmuel Bar Shelas, says in the name of Rav, Keshem shemishanichnas of mematim b'simcha. Just like when of begins, we decrease our simcha. So too mishanichnas Adar marbin b'simcha. When Adar enters, we increase simcha. It's famous Gemara. This Gemara is not brought lahalacha and Shulchan Aruch. I should say the Mishanichnas of part is not, which is the topic for tonight's shir. Mishanichnas of Marbin B'Simcha. I'm sorry, I said of. It was a Freudian slip. I should Mishanichnas of Marbin B'Simcha. Hopefully it'll be that way this year. That this year, God will Mashiach along be here, and when of commences, we will increase our simcha. But in the meantime, it's now already Adar. Today was a Shchedish Adar. Mishanichnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha. Everybody says it's a halacha. You have to increase in simcha in the month of Adar. Says who? Who says it's a halacha? I'll tell you a news flash. Shulchan Aruch doesn't mention it. The Rambam doesn't mention it. Even though the Rambam, yeah, okay, fine. The Rambam doesn't mention it either. Where do we find it? We find it in the Magen Avram, which is on the page of the Shulchan Aruch. The Magen Avram in Simin Taf Reish Pei Vav, which is the laws of Purim. The Magen Avram in Sif Katan Hey says, this is source number 2, towards the end of the line, Mishanichnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha. So it's on the page of the Shulchan Aruch, but it's not an actual halacha in Shulchan Aruch. Mishanichnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha. Umisha Yesh Leidinim Akum. Ishbad Vadar. If you have to go to court with a Gentile, try to arrange it. You should go on Adar. Why? It's a good month for you. A good month for the Jews. So if you got to go to court, whatever, go on Adar. And interestingly, the people, the denizens of a local city, of a particular city, are permitted, he says, la'asois Purim, to make their own Purim, if a miracle happened in that city, the denizens of the city can get together and say, Raboisai, we're making a Purim for this day to celebrate the miracle that happened to our people. Interesting halacha. That's the Magen Avram. But the Mechaber doesn't bring this halacha. The Ramah doesn't bring this halacha. Likewise, source number 3, the Rambam also does not bring this halacha. But he does bring the of part. That's what's curious. Rambam, in Hilchos Tainiyos, in the Laws of Fast, chapter 5, halacha 6 says, Mishanichnas of B'Matim B'Simcha. So it's not like the Rambam didn't know the Gemara. Obviously, the Rambam knew the Gemara. He knew the Gemara very well. And he quotes half of the Gemara, the first part, Mishnah really, quotes the first part, and paskins la'alocha, mishanichnas of ma'atim b'simcha. When it comes to Adar, mishanichnas Adar ma'atim b'simcha, he doesn't write it, doesn't mention it. So the question is, why not? Why doesn't the Rambam say it?
Well, maybe because the emotion of being sad, right, is something that can be legislated, right? But you can't really do that for happy.
Interesting. Okay. So in other words, we can give specific directions. We can stipulate how to be sad.
Right.
Whereas to be happy, we cannot stipulate. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Agree, disagree? Anyone? Huh?
It's an interesting point.
Interesting, yeah. Talking interesting.
Well, maybe mourning is a bit of a bit sad because I mean, you could sort of like you have to mourn.
Yeah.
Even mourners are not always sad every minute of the, you go into your home and people might be laughing or have happy story or,
Right.
you have all kinds of emotions going on.
All kinds of emotions. Right, that's true. Look, you could say, for example, you can't get married in Av, right? Because marriage is a simcha and the matin b'simcha, so maybe I shouldn't get married in Av. You could say such a thing, right? So that you could legislate, I guess. How could you be happy? Make a suda. Why can't we legislate? In fact, I think there's a holiday coming up that we do make a suda, right? So why can't we legislate that the simcha of Adar should be to every day make a suda? Or
because I don't say by definition, but like a seuda is you're eating food,
so
it's not it's hard for the I don't know, I just think that it's hard for the Torah to go to someone and say, you have to be happy. Like what if you wake up and you're not happy? Like
okay.
So you're gonna get an avera because you woke up, on the wrong side of the bed. Like it's hard to require that, but like to have some, but to do things that are showing a level of not happy is doable.
So can't we do things that show a level of happy?
Well, what does that mean?
I don't know, making a suda, maybe learning extra Torah, maybe I don't know, whatever. Okay, anyway, we'll keep it in mind. Keep it in mind. So now, when the Gemara says, and the Magen Avraham brings, Mishenichnas Adar Marbin b'simcha, what kind of simcha are we talking about here? So we might perhaps suggest that it does not mean simcha shel mitzvah, the joy of doing a mitzvah. It does not mean that. Why not? Because you anyway have to be b'simcha when you do a mitzvah. You don't need Adar to begin to teach you to be b'simcha. Every mitzvah you do, whether it's putting on film, whether it's learning Torah, whether it's davening, whatever the mitzvah is, you have to be b'simcha. So maybe we could say that marbin b'simcha does not mean the simcha of a mitzvah. I anyway have to do that. What marbin b'simcha means is general simcha. General simcha. Maybe that's what it means. Let's take a look in the Shut Chasam Sofer, the Shilas and Chuvas of the Chasam Sofer, source number 4. It's in the Shilas and Chuvas of Or HaChaim, Siman Kuf Samach 160. The Chasam Sofer, I don't know if we ever had the Chasam Sofer, one of our Shurim. Now in Baruch Hashem, we've been having the Shurim for not so long, but long enough that I'm forgetting sometimes who I quoted and who I didn't. But I don't think we had the Chasam Sofer before. It was Moshe Sofer, born in 1762 in Frankfurt, and passed away 1839 in Pressburg. And he is considered, I guess you could say, one of the greatest poskim. There's really, if the Chasam Sofer says something, okay, Chasam Sofer says. You can't just, well, he's not, it wasn't one of the great. No, if he says it, then we have to take that seriously. He was well known for many things. He had great offspring, great children, and great ancestors, and so on and so forth. Sofer, I think, because his ancestors were Sofrim, I think, were scribes. One of the things he was famous for saying was he lived in Germany, or I should say he lived in Germany and Pressburg and the whole area over there, where the reform movement was beginning to take hold. And he was very, very against it. And he's reported to have said, Chodosh Osir Min HaTorah, which is the play on words. Because Chodosh, we know, is a halacha that has to do, people talk about when Pesach comes around. Chodosh versus Yocham. The Torah stipulates that you're not allowed to have grain that is new, that is Chodosh. Rather, the Omer offering, or the date of the Omer offering, has to have passed. So the halach is that Chodosh, grain that's new, meaning that Pesach, or the Omer offering, didn't yet pass. It was harvested before that, and that time period is not yet passed. It's called Chodosh, and it's also min HaTorah to eat such grain. Also min HaTorah. But he was saying Chodosh, anything new in Yiddishkeit, any attempts to change the tradition and so forth, is also min HaTorah. You can't get involved. And he was not thrilled about the reform situation taking hold and so forth, to put it mildly. So what does he say? Shut Chasam Sofer writes at the end of the line, V'omnam, the Hilchos Megillah, in the laws of Megillah, like Kosav Rambam, the Rambam doesn't write, V'loya Shulchan Aruch, nor does the Shulchan Aruch write, Hadamar bin B'simcha. They don't write the halacha Mar bin B'simcha. even though they do discuss the laws of, and the Rambam says explicitly, Mishnah Nichnas of, and Matim B'Simcha, like we saw in source 3. Also with regarding if you have a court case with a gentle and so forth. But says the Chassam Sofer v'hamogen Avram, but the Mogen Avram that we just saw in source number 2, Simon Tovnish Pevav Sif Katan Hey, he taka quotes it. Mogen Avram quotes it. Shulchan Aruch doesn't quote it. The Rambam doesn't quote it. V'tzorich leida ta'am lashmat azu. So we have to understand, why does the Rambam omit this halacha, which I would imagine, I didn't try a scientific experiment, but I bet if you take a poll of Jews, is it a halacha? I would guess many people say, of course it's a halacha. My question would be, where does it say that? Does it say Shulchan Aruch? Okay, the Magen Avraham says, good, Magen Avraham. But why didn't the Shulchan Aruch say? Why didn't the Rambam say? Okay. Moving on from there, take a look at source number 5, the Nimuke Or HaChaim. So this is two firsts now we're going to have. In the first time we're quoting the Nimuke Or HaChaim, who is better known as the Munkacher Rav, or also better known as the Minchas Elazar, or the Minchas Eluzar. The Munkacher Rav was Chaim Elazar Shapiro, and he was born in Austria, Hungary, I don't know exactly what it was, and nowadays it's Poland, in 1868. And he passed away in 1937 in Czechoslovakia, or what was then Czechoslovakia. He's most well known for his Shilas and Chubas, the Minchas Elazar. I actually recently bought a set. And he also wrote here the sefer we're going to read a little bit from today, Nimuke Or HaChaim, which is a commentary on Shulchan Aruch Or HaChaim. We mentioned him. I think I mentioned him on a Friday night once. Between Mincha Ma'ariv and Friday night once. That in 1930, Minchas Elazar traveled to Eretz Yisrael to visit with the great Makubal, Shlomo Eliezer Alfani, also known as the Sabo Kadisha, the Holy Grandfather. And I think I told the story about on the Friday night. No, I think I did. About him davening Mincha very late on Shabbos, and the Sabo Kadisha wasn't happy about that. In any event, that's the first time we're quoting Minchas Elazar, not from the Sefer Minchas Elazar, but the same person, Sefer Nimuke Or HaChaim. It's also the first time we have an excerpt from the New York Times. Probably the last time also. Nach Shemam, right? Quote the New York Times. Why? Because I Googled him and up came this little obituary, and someone was able to get for me the PDF of it, or a little whatever. Chaim Elazar Shapiro, the Wonder Rabbi. I don't know why they call him the Wonder Rabbi. Head of thousands in Jewish sect. He was the Munkacher Rav. He was the Rebbe of the Munkacher Chassidim. Munkachevo, Czechoslovakia. May 12th, Chaim Elazar Shapiro, known as the Munkacher Wonder Rabbi, died today. He was 68 years old. Rabbi Shapiro was spiritual leader of a Chassidic, look how they say what Chassidic means, Jewish revivalist. You like that, eh? He was the spiritual leader of a Jewish revivalist sect, numbering thousands of followers here and abroad. For now, if someone asks me if I'm Chassidic, I'm going to say, no, I'm a Jewish revivalist.
You get a lot of people coming.
During his illness, the rabbi, listen to this, the rabbi received from 12,000 Jews the world over symbolic donations of one day from each of their lives. Heard of such thing before?
No, not really.
People saying that, Hashem, I'm offering my life or days from my life for that person. So it's black and white in the New York Times, all the news that fits to print. Anyway, it was small, it was cute, so I included it in today's shir. The New York Times could use this quote for being included in the shir, and maybe we'll lift them up and elevate them to a higher level. Page number 2. Here's the Nimuke Or HaChaim. It's a few pages long, so I took a few excerpts, and we're going to jump around a little bit. First of all, the first thing he says on the top right, with the Vod of Temuin, he's referring to the Chassam Sofer. Chassam Sofer asked the question that we just saw, why doesn't the Rambam or the Shulchan Aruch quote the Halacha Mishnah Nichnas Adar Ma'ariv B'Simcha? That's the question. And the Chassam Sofer goes as Mayach, a whole long answer. And the Minchas Elazar in the Nimuke HaChaim says, short and succinct, straight to the point, but the Vod of Temuin, his words are wondrous, meaning, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? B'mechilas kvoid teirosei harama. With mechilas kvoid, how do you say, basically, please forgive me for being so abrupt and succinct, but what you said doesn't make any sense. That's what he's saying in the Chassam Sefer. Now, none of us can say that the Chassam Sefer. The Minchas Elazar, he could say such a thing. We are not allowed to say such things. Minchas Elazar says it. So he goes through the Chassam Sefer and why he doesn't like what he says. Then he continues in the second paragraph. Oh no, but chashavti b'guf hadavar. I was thinking about it, he says. Why taka does the Rambam exclude this halacha? What does he have? What is he biased? He doesn't want us to be happy. When should we start being happy? He doesn't like it. Why doesn't he include it? So I thought to answer as follows. Based on what I wrote in the book called Shari Yisachar. I have a question in the Gemara and Tainus, source number 1. When it comes to the first part of the halacha regarding of and matin besimcha, and how do you decrease your simcha? How do you diminish your simcha? So he says, "Mafura sham begemara poskim be'eza davar matin." What do you mean how? The Gemara says how. The poskim, the halacha authorities say how to diminish our simcha. Kigoin masav maton, certain business dealings, not supposed to build a binyan shel simcha, a joyous house. Ayin or achaim, simin kafkuf non aleph. Go look over there in Hilchos Tisha B'Av, in the Shulchan Aruch, that discusses all the ways, all the legislation of how to diminish our simcha. However, when it comes to the second part of the halacha, the Gemara doesn't tell you how to do it. The Gemara tells us how to diminish simcha. Good. It does not tell us how to increase simcha. It's just v'naktin, and it's just quoted rak b'derech agav. It's like a side point almost. Oh, kishem shenichnas av v'chulu. Just like when av comes in, okay, also with Adar. But the Gemara does not stipulate how to increase simcha. So the obvious question is, why not? The Gemara should have told us. The Gemara tells us how to diminish simcha. Why don't you tell me how to increase simcha? Maybe, Shalom, it's to your point. Maybe it's not so easy to legislate how to be simcha. But why? But Tachlis, why doesn't the Gemara explain to us what to do or what not to do? Would have made our lives easier. Let's not continue now to the second paragraph in the right column. We're going to continue to the left column now. We'll come back to because I copied and pasted it a little bit out of order. Left column. But Amarti Shom, over there in my Sefer Shai Yisachar, says Reb Chaim Elazar Shapiro the Minchas Elazar, the Adar. It's fact the opposite. The Adar Yesh Loimer Dezo Mekavonos Chachmenu Zal. Well, you think the Chachamim forgot to tell you how to be b'simcha? You think they didn't know how to be? No. This was very intentional that they did not stipulate how to increase your simcha. This was intentional. Why? When Ov comes in, we diminish our simcha. And the Gemara needs to tell us precisely how to diminish our simcha. Why? We shouldn't mistakenly think, God forbid, because after all, because after all, if Chazal say to do it, then we have to do it. So if Chazal say, we are obligated to follow the words of the Chachamim. We must diminish our simcha and of. So he says, we shouldn't think, chas v'shalom, liyas ba'atzus gomur. We shouldn't think, God forbid, that we should be depressed in off. We should be marash chayra. It's a little hard to translate exactly marash chayra, but it means like melancholy. Rahman al-Itzlan, God save us. That's not what Chazal meant. They didn't mean you should be depressed. They didn't mean you should go around and sad and the whole out. That's not what they meant. And in fact, ve'emes, and here we see the Hasidic leanings, to put it mildly, of Minchas Elazar. He's writing here, he's quoting this in a Sefer of Halacha, but he's quoting Chassidus. This is not the path of the Baal Shem Tov and his successors, his disciples. To be sad, to be depressed, to be melancholy. That is not the way of Chassidus, not the way of the Baal Shem Tov. In fact, and really, a person has to, for sure, be actually of broken heart, and he has to cry for the fact that we're in Golus. The Churban Beis HaMikdash and the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. A person has to cry for this. But Aval, even when we're crying for something as horrible as the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, Aval net, which is of course, and during Av you better cry for the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. Aval nets of legamre, but not entirely. Not entirely sad. As if a person has given up hope, despair, the Mashiach will ever come. Chas v'sholom, as is known from the different svarim of Chassidus and the great tzaddikim. In fact, moreover, it's an obligation from the Torah to be b'simcha, he says. The pasuk says, Parshas Kisavoi, since you didn't serve Hashem in Simcha, that's why certain punishments came to the Jewish people. So we must be b'simcha. Therefore, we are forced to conclude that it is forbidden to be despondent. It is forbidden to give up hope. It is forbidden to be depressed, melancholy, completely saddened. That is not allowed. And therefore, says the Minchas Elazar, therefore, the Gemara must tell us which specific ways should we diminish our simcha. Meaning this, but not more. This and not, don't be machmir and make up things to be depressed about. Just do what it says in the Gemara and the Poskim and not more. Meaning, if a person, God forbid, is an ofel, a person, God forbid, is in mourning, a family member passes away, God forbid, right? Is there a section of Shulchan Aruch called Hilchos Avelus? Absolutely. Do you have to follow it? Absolutely. Whether Shiva or the Oinin, Shiva, Shlei, whatever the halachas are, right? Bathing, and there's different halachas. Are you obligated to follow it? 100%. Like any other halachas in Shulchan Aruch. Do you have to look for chumras? You have to look for stringencies and no, you don't. He says, do what it says, but don't do more. So he says, so too, lest we mistakenly think that Ov is a time to become depressed and melancholy, and maybe even give up hope Mashiach would ever come, God forbid. No. Only A, B, and C. Only these things that we've stipulated. To tell us also that in all other areas in our life, even during Ov, Yischazik b'simcha. You hear these words? Talking about Ov. Yischazik b'simcha ubitochin. We should strengthen ourselves with joy and trust in God, trusting towards Hashem, and we should anticipate the Geula, the redemption. This fits perfectly in line with the practice of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that the Rebbe encouraged people, of course, to follow Shulchan Aruch, which says that in the month of Av you have to diminish simcha. But that's only in the ways that Chazal tell us to diminish simcha. However, in other areas that it's permissible to increase simcha, we should. And the Rebbe famously, spoke about making a siyum on a Masechet of Gemara, specifically during the 9 days. And afterwards as well, or beforehand, any time. But meaning, is it permissible to make a siyum on a Masechet during the 9 days? Sure, of course, why not? Torah. Good, so it's simcha? Yeah, simcha, good, so do that. Fits right in with Minchas Elazar. That's regarding off. However, now let's flip it around to the other side of the statement from the Gemara. Aval mishenichnas Adar marbim b'simcha comes Adar marbim b'simcha nokat stam, and Chazal don't tell you how to be marder, how to increase simcha. Why not? You feel where it's going, right? Kimida teva meruba. This is a midah tova. When it comes to sadness, when it comes to mourning, we're not looking to have a lot of it. Okay, I'll follow Shulchan Aruch. Good. But I'm not going to go beyond the letter of the law. When it comes to simcha, meruba midah tova, the midah tova is more and more plentiful. And in whatever manner possible, and in whatever manner during the month of Adar that we can have simcha, mitzvah ika. That's a mitzvah in any and every area that we increase our simcha in Adar.
But there's no concern that people are going to take that and then, in the name of simcha, start doing some stupid or inappropriate things. There's no concern about that. There's only concern that if it comes to mourning, someone might go overboard and become depressed.
It's a good question. I mean, in other places it talks about, for example, in Purim itself, right? It's mitzvah to drink on Purim. So what's the mitzvah to drink? Is it a mitzvah to become a fool? Become a drunken, intoxicated fool? I don't think that's a mitzvah.
No, but there are plenty of people that end up acting in that way in the name of whatever the simcha would be.
So maybe we'll do a shir about drinking on Purim, maybe before Purim. I don't know, can't promise, but that might not be appropriate.
Right, but why is but why is that not the concern? The concern is only someone might become overly depressed, which is not so good. Why is there no concern that there will be so many people that might go above in a negative way in the name of simcha, the same way like extremism, the same way that people might do certain things in the name of religious being a religious zealot or something like that. The extremism on both ends should be bad.
I guess the Minchas Allah wasn't worried about that. He doesn't say. I don't know. It's a good question. Let's hold that thought for a minute. Everyone should evaluate for themselves, in their heart and in their soul, what they should do to be b'simcha. But the Gemara does not tell us the details of how to be b'simcha. Because if the Gemara would stipulate what we should do to be b'simcha, it would be automatically, by definition, excluding other areas of simcha. But simcha is not the same for everybody. So the Gemara does not want to tell you exactly in which precise ways to increase our simcha, because it actually wants you to increase your simcha in any way possible that you're able to do. Of course, shouldn't lead to frivolity. That's not the point, right? Really, it's a mitzvah to increase in any way possible, and in your ways. Fulfill the words of the Chachamim. That's why the Gemara doesn't stipulate how to be b'simcha. Now, next paragraph. Based on this that I just told you, now maybe we can explain why Taka the Rambam leaves out this halacha Adar Marim Simcha. Says the Nimukei Orachaim Shaloi Hevi Hach the Mishnechnas Adar Marim Simcha. Why? Keeping the dark in the Kodesh. Because the shita of the Rambam, the approach of the Rambam, is to only quote halachas, as he says, es hamaisa asher yasu, that tell you specifically what and how to do it and when to do it. But not in matters that are dependent on your heart. How do you increase in simcha is not necessarily the way that I increase in simcha. That's not the way of the Rambam to discuss things like that. To discuss something that's dependent on your feeling.
But again, the same question. Different people mourn, or different people feel in the negative way, the opposite of happy, sadness, whatever it is, differently. So, but the Rambam, who only talks about specific action, does focus on that aspect.
Correct, because in that area, the Chachamim were worried, he's explaining, that if we don't tell you how to mourn, people will go wild. And again, you have a question on the flip side, which is a fair question. And since the Gemara doesn't stipulate how to be b'simcha, and we explain why, because it can't limit our simcha. It says anyway, simcha, any simcha is good. Therefore, the Rambam doesn't say the halacha. That's his answer. It's not. The answer I just told you, I don't like it. I don't like the answer I just told you. It doesn't make sense to say that the Rambam is excluding this halacha, Mishnechnas Adar Marim Simcha, because it's not directly Hamatar Sheyasu. Why? The Harambam, go now to the right paragraph on the right column. The Harambam Mevi Binyan Simcha B'Soif Ilchas Yantif. The Rambam does talk about the mitzvah of Simcha, even though Simcha is different for different people in Hilchas Yantiv. And likewise, V'chein B'Seif Hilchas Yisuribiyah, also over there. Binyan Tas Machshava Shidbak B'Teira. In the thought, a presence of mind a person should have in cleaving to Teira. Shehi Ayelas Ahavim V'Yalas Chein. That's what generates love and grace. V'chein Kayutziod Kam B'Mesek L'Shoyni. And also numerous other places as well. I'm thinking of Hilchas Lulav. I'm thinking of Hilchas Lulav. Does not. Also Hilchas Lulav. The Rambam also writes about Simcha in Hilchas Lulav. Befrat, and especially in Hilchas Deos, in the laws of Deos, of knowledge or whatever. Binyani Deos B'nei Adam, Dvarim Atulim B'Leiv. Various matters that Rambam does talk about that are tluyin belief, that are contingent on a person's feeling. In Cain, and if that's the case, that the Rambam does indeed talk about things that are, let's call them emotional, for lack of a better term. In Cain, a dying tikshed. So go back to square one. I still have the question. Why did the Rambam quote it? And it concludes, Al Cain, Adain Sorich Iyun. Still need to figure it out. Now, okay. Yeah, questions or comments are okay so far. We know the question. The question is, why did the Rambam leave it out? Also, Shulchan Aruch. Now, here's an approach.
Shulchan Aruch doesn't talk about simcha in those other areas that they're saying the Rambam does?
Off the top of my head, I don't know exactly. Let's see. You have Hilchos Yantiv. I don't think that the Shulchan Aruch says it over there. Isuri Bia, no. It doesn't really have exactly Hilchos Isuri Bia exactly. It's structured differently. Hilchos Deos, it doesn't have exactly Hilchos Deos. I don't know. Let's take more of a global approach. Maybe it's not global exactly, but the statement Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. Where'd it come from? Who said it? What's the background? What's surrounding this statement? So if we go back to source one, we will see Amar of Yehuda in the Gemara in Tainus. Amar of Yehuda brayed the Rav Shmuel bar Shelas. Mishmei the Rav. He's the one who says it. Shmuel bar Shelas. Turn out to page 2, source number 6. The Gemara in Shabbos. The Gemara in Shabbos daf Lamed Amud Beis. The Gemara in Shabbos says like this: Amar of Yehuda brayed the Rav Shmuel bar Shelas. Recognize it? Omer of Yehuda Bereder of Shmuel Bar Shelas Mishmei de Rav. Oh, same person. Bikshu Chachamim Ligbei Sefer Koheles. The Chachamim said, Koheles, the book of Koheles, Ecclesiastes. That's a dangerous book. It's a dangerous book. We want to hide it away. It's like atomic. It's nuclear weapons. You can't just give it to anybody. Why? Because within the book of Koheles, it contradicts itself. And I guess if you're going to be a student and you're going to open the book of Koheles, it's going to say statement A. And you're going to read statement B, completely contradicts statement A. God forbid, it could lead a person, God forbid, to who knows what type of heretical thoughts or who knows what. So they said, we want to hide it. We want to put it away. Then why Taka didn't they hide it? If it's so dangerous, if you're playing with atomic energy, why didn't they hide it? Because it begins with the words of Torah and ends with words of Torah. And then the Gemara goes through what the words of Torah are. We're going to skip that for now. And the Gemara continues. And this is all the statements of Shmuel Bar Shelas. In the middle of the first line. When you told me that Koheles has contradictory passages within itself, what were you referring to? Ksiv, the one verse says, Toiv kas mischoik. Anger is better than laughter or playing. Anger is better than games. Better to be angry. Uksiv, but then you have another passage that says, L'schoik amarti mahalal. I praise laughter. So which one is it? We like schoik, we like laughter, we don't like it. Furthermore, Ksiv, V'shabachti anisa simcha. I praised simcha. I praised joy. It makes it sound like joy is a good thing, right? Uksi, but then another pasuk says, "Lo simcha, maza oise." Simcha, what good does it do? What do you need simcha for? There's no place for simcha. So which one is it? Do you need simcha? Is it praiseworthy, or no? Maybe you don't need simcha. And for the Gemara, like kasha. Don't worry, it's not a kasha. They're not actually contradictory. Why so? Why they're not contradictory? Toiv kas mischoik. Toiv kas shekois HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'tzadikim v'lo mischoik shemesak HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'shem v'lo mazeh. Okay, let's skip this because I want to get to the point. I want to make sure we have enough time. Schoik amadi v'hal zeh schoik shemesak HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'tzadikim v'lo mazeh. Abba. Oh, now on the fourth line, at the end of the fourth line, v'shabachti anisa simcha. When the pasuk says v'shabachti, I gave shavach, I gave praise to simcha. What was that referring to? Zu simcha shel mitzvah. That is the joy of doing a mitzvah. But then the other verse that seemingly contradicts it, which not the Gemara saying it's not a contradiction. The verse is the simcha mazeh oise question mark exclamation mark rhetorical question. Simcha, what good does it do? You don't need simcha. Zu simcha she'eina shel mitzvah. That's the simcha that's not connected to a mitzvah. It's simcha because you are drinking a nice glass of wine. It's simcha because it's a nice weather outside. Whatever it may be. L'lamedcha. This comes to teach. Remember, the person saying this is Shmuel bar Shelas. L'lamedcha, this comes to teach you. She'ein shechina sheira loimitich atzvus. The shechina doesn't dwell. Loimitich atzvus, not when there's sadness. V'loimitich atzvus, not in laziness. V'loimitich schayk, not in laughter. V'loimitich kalus reish, not in full lightheartedness. V'loimitich sicha, not in stam conversation. V'loimitich dvarim batelim, and not in wasteful words. Ella mitoich dvar simcha shel mitzvah. So Shmuel bar Shelas holds that the only place for simcha in our lives is simcha shel mitzvah. Any other simcha has no place. You're happy because you're eating a nice piece of meat and having a nice cup of wine. What are you doing? There's no place for such simcha. Shmuel bar Shelas. Now the very same person says Mishnichnas Adar Marbim Simcha. 1 second. We know he holds that the only simcha is simcha shel mitzvah. Any other non-simcha related has no place, except in Adar. When Shmuel bar Shelas comes and says Mishnichnas Adar Marbim Simcha,
that's not just mitzvah.
Oh, exactly. Because simcha shel mitzvah, he holds in general, is the only simcha you're allowed to have. Comes Adar, you can have other simcha too. That's what he holds.
And then the reason why the Rambam doesn't say that because the Rambam would agree that it's only simcha mitzvah, even in Adar, so he doesn't mention it.
Soon. We're going to get to it soon. 1 second. But that's why he doesn't quote the statement. Why doesn't he quote it? Because the author of the statement I just lost myself here.
But the Rambam doesn't quote it.
Okay, let's look at the Rambam source number 7. The Rambam Hilchos Deis. It's Gishmaka Halacha. Long Halacha, Gishmaka Halacha. Haderech HaYeshara, Halacha Dalet, chapter 1 of Hilchos Deis, Halacha 4. Haderech HaYeshara, he Midah Beinonis. Famous Rambam right here, right? Straight path is the Midah Beinonis. Go in the middle, like you said before. So don't go to either extreme. It says the Rambam, go in the Derech HaBeinonis, middle way. Midah Beinonis V'chol Day of Day, and every type of Midah. You call it Day Sheish L'Adam. V'hi Adeya, Shi Rechaika Mishtek Tzobes. Richuk Shove, right? That should be equidistant from each extreme. Go right in the middle. Not close to the one extreme or the other, straight down the middle. Therefore, says the Rambam, the early sages instructed us. A person should constantly be evaluating their approach. And he should be evaluating and judging. Make sure he's steering back on the middle path, right? You're driving in the car, you want to correct your steering wheel a little bit to make sure you're in the middle. He should be complete. Ketza. What does this mean? How should he do this? Don't be angry. Don't be quick to anger. But on the other hand, don't be like a dead guy. Don't be quick to anger, but don't be unfeeling either. Ella, Beinoni, should be middle. What does it mean? Only get angry at something very, very significant. A davar gadol. Something that should be mad about. You don't want to allow yourself, once you let the floodgates open of anger, it takes over a person. Anger can, God forbid, destroy. So only get angry at something very, very, very big. Likewise, and therefore also you should only have desires for things that you really need. Something that you can't do without. Like it says that tzaddik eats for the satiate in the neshama. So we should also don't eat just because the food looks good. Also with work, don't be a workaholic. Work and you earn the money you need to take care of your family. Good. Don't be crazy about it. A little bit is good for a tzaddik. Also, don't be too stingy. And likewise, not only don't be too stingy with your money, but also don't just throw it away. Don't give it away to everybody. Ella, they say if you miss your give according to your means. And give loans to whoever needs when you're able to. Don't be too frivolous and too lighthearted. Nor sad and despondent. Oh, this is what I wanted to get to, by the way. The whole thing I read was just for these words. Ella sameach kol yomov. That's the key words right there. Benachas, b'sever panim yafis. V'chein sha'ar de Yosef, likewise every other thing else. But derech zu hi derech chacham. This is the way of the sages. Kol adam shal de Yosef, v'beinonis v'mutzos nikar chacham. So if you take the middle path, you are called a chacham. So we see the Rambam paskins and Ilchos Deos, which comes before Sefer Zmanim, comes before Ilchos Megillah. The Rambam paskins, a person is obligated to be sameach kol yamav. So therefore, he doesn't need to say Mishinichnas Adar Marvin B'Simcha. Why? Because you don't have to be B'Simcha.
Given.
It's a given.
Yeah, but Mishinichnas Adar Marvin. Wouldn't the focus be on Marvin more than what you would be doing Kol Yamav? Even according to the Rambam. Yeah, all right, Kol Yamav. Great, you have to be the Sameach. Mishinichnas Adar Marvin more.
We may then go back to the Nimukei Orachaim possibly. In what way could I be b'simcha? It's different. It's totally believed. Depends on the person. Depends on different ways to be b'simcha. Plus the fact that if the Chachamim told us exactly how to be b'simcha, then it would be saying this but not other ways. Like with Avelus, only do these acts of Avelus, but not other things. So if they would tell us specifically how to be b'simcha, how to increase the simcha, then maybe we'd be stuck and say, well, what that means I can't do anything else. I can only do these things.
Right.
So maybe that's why.
Yeah, but the Rambam and Hilchos Deos, if they bring in a proof that it's unnecessary because the Rambam says B'Misameach Kol Yamav, the reality is, yeah, but so what? That doesn't take care of the Marvin part.
Doesn't take care of the Marbin. You're right. Doesn't take care of the Marbin. That, I guess, the fact that the Rambam anyway holds you have to be Sameach Kol Yamav, plus the fact that the person who said the statement, Shmuel Bar Shelas, holds that the only Simcha Shel Mitzvah. So there's no room to be Marbin B'Simcha. Maybe. And this is supported also by the Ramah, the end of the Chaz Megillah. See the Ramah down here? It says, well, we'll just read the whole Mechaber, the whole Shulchan Aruch. See the Aleph on the right? Yeah. Source number 8. This is the Mechaber. This is talking a leap year. 14th and 15th of Adar Rishon, also known as Purim Katan and Shushan Purim Katan. We don't say Tachanan. You don't say Kapitel Chof and Tilim in the davening. I don't think the Nusach Ashkenaz says that, but Nusach Sfarden says it. You're not allowed to give a eulogy or to fast on Purim Katan or Shushan Purim Katan. Okay. Hago says the Ramah. Some say actually on Purim Katan there's an obligation to have a little bit more Mishnah B'Simcha. We don't have to. But being that some say you should have a Suda on Purim Katan, which we don't have this year, right? It's only one of this year. You should. Here's the point now. Concludes the Ramah. This is the end of Hilchos Megillah. This is also the end of the entire section of Shulchan Aruch called Orach Chaim. The concluding words are the Toiv Leiv Mishte Tamid. Kind of like the Rambam's Sameach Kol Yamav. Toiv Leiv Mishte Tamid. A person of good heart is constantly in a state of mishte, of celebration, of joy, of simcha. So that's why the Rambam doesn't bring it, and that's why the Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring it, because the Shulchan Aruch or the Ramah is following the shita of the Rambam that you anyway have to be b'simcha. Yeah, I don't have to be Simcha. So I don't need a separate instruction for Simcha in Adar. And again, the person who said this instruction for Simcha in Adar holds you're actually not allowed to have Simcha any other time of the year unless it's Simcha Shel Mitzvah. But the Rambam doesn't hold like that. The Rambam says you actually are supposed to be Simcha all year long. Simcha Shel Mitzvah, of course, Simcha Shel Mitzvah, even other Simchas too. That's the whole point of the Rambam. Samech Kol Yom means you should be Simcha in all areas of your life, and the Shulchan Aruch agrees. Therefore, they don't need to mention the halacha. Let's now read how that's encapsulated in a footnote that the Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote in a letter written in 1971. In general, just by brief introduction of what this letter is that there are general in the written correspondence of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, which are published in books called Igros Kodesh, the Holy Letters. I speak about them somewhat regularly, I think. There are three types of letters. The most common type of letter is a personal letter. The Rebbe wrote to a certain individual for whatever reason. They wrote to him, he wrote to whatever it was. It's private, personal letter. Then there's another type of letter called a michtav kloli, a general letter. What's a general letter? Certain times during the year, specifically before Shoshana and Pesach, but other times as well, the Rebbe would write a letter that he addressed. I don't know if anybody since Moshe Rabbeinu ever did this before. The entire Jewish people. The entire Jewish people. The letters are written al bnei u'bnei Yisrael b'chol makom she'hem, to the Jewish men and women in every place they may be. And he would write a so-called general letter discussing themes of the upcoming Yom Tov. Those letters often were footnoted extensively with sources and so forth. The third type of letter is a michtav klali prati. It's a general letter that was sent to specific people. And oftentimes the specific people each got like an addition, like a PS. So this is a michtav klali prati. This is a letter that was a general letter, means it was a stock letter, if you will, but it was sent to specific individuals for whatever reasons. And this is a footnote in that letter, where the Rebbe writes in the letter, you should be besimcha, because it's marbid, there's a chiyuv of marbin besimcha. And on that as Chazal said, She'omru Chazal, it's a chiyuv to be besimcha, the Rebbe has the following footnote upon which tonight's class was based, to the best of my ability. Tainus Chavtes Seif Amud Aleph. That was source number 1, right? That's the Gemara. And also Mogen Avram Simon Toperish Pevav Sipkot and Hey. The Mogen Avram quotes it. But Re'ei Shailas Uchuvas Chasam Sefer Chelik Arachaim Simon Kuf Samach. So look in the Chasam Sefer. What does the Chasam Sefer say? He asks, why did the Rambam leave out the halacha? And look in Nimuk Orachaim. Look in the Nimuk Orachaim, the Minchas Elazar, the Simon Toperish Pevav, V'nishar B'tzarech Iyun. Note that the Minchas Elazar leaves it with a question mark. I'm not sure why the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch left out the halacha. Comes the Rebbe's Chiddush upon which our shir was based. For Ulai Shleimar, maybe we can say as an answer to the question of the Chasam Sofer, Sheharambam l'shitosoi. The Rambam is just going according to his approach, to his shita, namely that shetzarich liyos sameach kol yomav. You have to be b'simcha kol yomav. The Rebbe emphasizes the words here every day. The following sources I did not look up or quote. Similarly, in the second chapter, Halacha Zayin Chazdeis, Urei Gamkein, look up also Pirush Mishnayos of the Rambam, Berachos Perek Tes Mishnah. I didn't look it up. That'll be homework. The Rambam holds you have to be b'simcha kol yomav, always. Mashe'ein kain on the fourth line. Morid d'shmaisei, literally, which is not the case with the master of our statement, i.e. Reb Shmuel Bar Shelas, who is the one who said the statement Mishenichnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha, the Ba'adar Marbin B'Simcha, because he says the Sviralei, he holds the Simcha she'ena shel mitzvah. If it's a simcha that's not of a mitzvah, aleh namar ula simcha mazo isa shabbos lamed. What does the simcha do? You're not allowed to have simcha unless it's simcha shel mitzvah. So that's why we don't quote him, because I don't need him to tell me to be b'simcha, because I'm anyway b'simcha. Ula ha'ir, and just to add and to point out, Meir Ramah, which was source number 8, the Ramah, Seifichas Megillah. The Siyun Chelik Oirachaim. Interesting. Why does the Rebbe need to tell us that in parentheses? Why does the Rebbe need to tell us that in addition to the fact that it's in Hilchos Megillah, it's also the conclusion of Orachaim? Why does the Rebbe need to point this out to me for? It makes a difference at the beginning of Orach Chaim, the end of Orach Chaim, the middle of Orach Chaim. And what does it say there? V'toiv lev mishte tomid, constantly. So I don't need someone to tell me in Adar to be b'simcha. I don't need someone to tell me that simcha other than simcha shel mitzvah is permissible, because I already know that from the Rambam in Hilchos Deos. I already know that from the Ramah in Hilchos Megillah. Now, why the Rebbe needs to stipulate that it's in the conclusion of Orach Chaim, I don't know. But perhaps because we have to know that this is like the dessert of life. How you finish the meal, so to speak, that's what dessert is. The last thing is important. That's what people remember. The taste they leave you with. Right. So the conclusion of the book of Orach Chaim, the way of life, the path of life of the Code of Jewish Law, telling us how to live. What's the last line we read? Gotta be b'simcha, tamid, constantly. And that is the simcha. I hope it came together a little bit. I know we didn't necessarily address everything. I hope it came together a little bit, and we explored some interesting ideas with Elazar, some Sefer, the Rambam. And now we know that if someone says it's a halacha to be b'simcha, we could just ask them, where does it say that? What's the source? What's your source? Or you could say, I'm curious. Where does it say that in Shulchan Aruch? And the answer is, it doesn't. Oh, maybe the Rambam says it? No, he doesn't say it either. Okay. Anyway, the main thing is we should be b'simcha. We should be zoicha to the ultimate simcha, which is the coming of Mashiach. And then we can celebrate Purim in Yerushalayim, in our Kodesh, and Hashem. And again, as mentioned, tonight's shir was dedicated for a refuah shlema for Avraham ben Leah. Hashem should send him a refuah shlema kreva. And thank you everyone for coming, and to be continued in Mitzvah Hashem.
Sure.